will end. And what is hurting the economy is speculations. If there is no speculations and the facts are there and questions are being answered in court, that will then work better for the South African economy.
Mr. Malloy, again, appreciate you joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
Over in Ethiopia, the government has reduced its stoic position on the current protests in the country and seems to be taking some sort of responsibility for the protests. This morning, Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn reportedly admitted that nearly half the country's voice is not being heard by Parliament. He said this in a statement following weeks of unprecedented protests across Ethiopia, but especially in the Oromia region. The statement was released after a meeting he had with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Currently, Ethiopia has first passed the post-constituency system, and in the last year's election, the governing coalition and its allies won every single seat. Staying with that meeting that Mr. Desalegn had with Mrs. Merkel during her three-nation tour of Africa, Ethiopia being the last leg, Mrs. Merkel called on the government to allow the protests. Not only that, she wants the government to condone it and the security forces as well. She calls on them to act proportionately, adding that opposition groups need to be included in the political process. Let's turn to Burundi now, where the government of Pierre Nkurunziza has banned 3 UN investigators from entering the country following an accusation of gross human rights violations. A letter signed by the Foreign Affairs Minister Alain Nyamitwe says the investigators, identified as Pablo de Grif of Colombia, Christophe Hens of South Africa, and Maya Salih Fadel of Algeria, were no longer welcome in Burundi. Burundi later said it was suspending every form of cooperation with the UN's Office for Human Rights. The government says the UN office will now need to discuss with the government any activities before it deploys any staff. There's been concern over the state of human rights in the country during the recent political crisis that was sparked by President Pierre Nkurunziza declaring he will run a 3rd term in office. Burundi's decision has not gone down well with former colonial power France, which says Burundi is losing credibility over promises with respect to human rights. The foreign ministry says Burundi has taken a wrong decision banning the UN investigators. The investigators are linked to a report which identified a Burundian official suspected of ordering the torture and killing of political opponents. To another former French colony, Côte d'Ivoire, where former First Lady Simone Gbagbo is facing charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. A witness told the judge at the trial in Abidjan that Mrs. Gbagbo was distributing arms that were used in the war following dispute over presidential elections back in 2010. Mrs. Simone Gbagbo has been on trial since May 2014, and the proceedings in her case resumed on Monday after being postponed for several weeks. The witness, however, admitted he did not see it happening personally, prompting Simone Gbagbo to counter his claims. Now, the cost of repatriating stranded Nigerians from foreign countries is quite huge. All agencies charged with the responsibility of stopping trafficking in persons must continually up their game. And advice is coming from Director of Search and Rescue of the National Emergency Management Agency, Air Commodore Salisu Mohammed. He received 154 Nigerians in Lagos recently. The returnees, many of them female, were brought back from Libya by the International Organization for Migration in collaboration with the Nigerian Embassy in Libya. Our correspondent, Bukola Jo Ketumbi, reports.
It's about the 4th time this year the voluntary assisted returnees from Libya are making their way back home. On board this aircraft are 154 Nigerians, and of this lot, for the first time, females outnumber males.
We had a total of 3 medical cases, and we had also about 9 females who we would regard them as vulnerable. Either they came with children or they were expectant. Most of them came from detention centers in Libya. They were not because they had committed any crime, but because they were in Libya illegally.
As they file out of the aircraft, the face of many remain despondent, and they have many tales of woe to tell.
One of my girlfriends that deceived me, that they have a housework to do. So I follow her to that place. So I see that the environment is not okay for me. So one day we are in living house. So police and I came to box the house. So they now took us, all of us, to prison. I spent almost 2 months and a half in prison.
My sister now carry me. It was my brother that brought me to Libya. They catch me on the road to go to Tripoli without documents. 4 months.
These 3 young girls were lured to Italy, but stopped en route Libya, were arrested and kept in detention camps with many other Nigerians. Not willing to face the camera, they say never again to the suffering they went through. While the issue of illegal migration is pertinent, a top official of NEMA says how much repatriation costs and what campaigns are run to dissuade others.
The cost implication is very huge to the federal government. As we can see, we have to provide them a lot of services, medical services. We have to transport them back to their various states. And we also have the mandate to educate Nigerians. But on these particular issues, we encourage states and the National Orientation Agency to do more of this job because their mandate fits into this properly.
No fewer than 550 Nigerians have returned in batches from Libya since March, when the IOM started the voluntary return program.
Still ahead on Network Africa. On the International Day of the Girl Child, we find out the hardest places to be a girl in the world. Please join us again.